Hey everybody, I'm Nico.
And I'm TK.
And that makes this X's for Podcast, your premier response show for, I guess, comics. You know, it's a comics night. It's what we do. We do comics. Super excited to talk about some books today. It's a little later than we normally broadcast, though. Super fun.
Oh yeah, my fault. I had a meeting.
Nah, I was working a job, so everything's all late stuff, and it's super fun. So really excited to talk about some books tonight. It's going to be a lot of books that I feel like the number one going at the front of these books is sort of questionable. We're going to be taking a look at Laura Kinney Wolverine number one, Ultimate Universe all 1 year in number one, Batman Dark Patterns number one, and Superwoman special. And I feel like every one of these books is really just another book, but it's nothing was bad. I don't feel like I had like a bad week. I've had some bad weeks. This wasn't a bad week.
There's actually some good stuff in here. A couple things I really enjoyed. I'm a little embarrassed. I didn't really think about the fact that they were all number ones.
Oh yeah, no. In terms of our SEO, number ones just tends to do better for us, so I try to keep it as number onesie as possible.
Well, and embarrassingly, there's always, for the big two, there's always a number one. Like if that's what we wanted to do every week, we could just do number ones, and we would be all set. If it hadn't worked out with either Laura Kinney or Ultimate Universe, we always had Pet Pool number one that we could have covered. I didn't really. Like I looking at all the books, I was like, oh, this is the first Dark Pattern, and oh, this is a one-shot Superwoman. Oh, this is the first Laura Kinney. Oh, this is a one-shot Ultimate. But I didn't really think about the fact that we were covering all number ones for the week, and there's sort of something to be said about the number onesiness of all of it.
Yeah, and the fact that my point is that they don't kind of really statement of the week was Wolverine number one. Nothing technically wrong with it. The art was beautiful, and if I hadn't already read Elektra, I would have liked it more. If I hadn't already read 6 Batman origin stories and early adventures this year, I might have liked Dark Patterns more, but once again, the art was exquisite. If Ultimate Universe hadn't been aping Hickman's better work when it's not even Hickman, but had really beautiful art, it would have been better. And I felt the same way about Superwoman. It had really great art, but there were times I was like, you're just kind of dragging me along for the story. This was not my favorite originality week.
Yeah, I for sure get that. I have other thoughts about Superwoman that we will get into. I apologize. I messaged you yesterday and I sent you an article and I was like, something big is happening at Marvel this week. And tomorrow, sorry, the article specifically said that it would be coming to, like, I sent it to you last night, so it said tomorrow, and that would be today. I can't imagine that what they were talking about is either the next issue solicit for One World Under Doom, or Doom's people that is just the Agents of Atlas doing Doom work. So I don't know what that announcement was, or if it got delayed, or if it was one of these two books, but that definitely did come up, and I apologized for hyping a thing that didn't happen.
I think, it's all new X-Men to me these days.
Yeah.
It's all, you know what? Maybe it really did happen, or maybe it was Storm fucking Wolverine, which I know we're not really talking about that book, but like anybody having a problem with that, I'm sorry. I guess you've never read canon. I'm sorry. Do you even watch the show Tamar? Like, they have fucked canonically, like repeatedly throughout canon in multiple decades. And I'm hard pressed to find a reason I really would love for you to convince me why these two would not fuck in a world where they're essentially part of a pantheon and every one of the gods fucked every one of the gods.
Here's my thing about it. I have you are 100% correct, and I have been there. Listen, I read X-Men The End. I've seen them wind up together. I think anything is plausible in this crazy world we're living in. I don't like that because of like big two moral standard. This is the same as Superman doesn't eat women out. as soon as they can't have casual sex. And it's always got to be a thing. This is the closest I feel like you could ever possibly come. And I was more or less okay with this, but even like you do have this moment when Storm wakes up where Rogue is like, but what about you and Wolverine? And like, no, just, I would be okay. I would be so much better if they were fuck buddies. I mean, like if they just, and like I said, this is as close as we will ever get, but there's always the sense of like, you know, for me, when Krakoa was happening and there was the relationship between Scott and Jean and Logan, I was like, Logan has a sexual relationship with Jean. He and Scott are in love. Like those two men need each other and like emotionally need each other more than either of them needs Jean or Jean needs either of them. But it really quickly got turned into Kieran Gillen wants to write Scott and Jean. Ben Percy wants to write Logan and Jean. And so everybody is in love with Jean and nobody is just having sex because they live on an island paradise. And this similarly, I just had this moment where I was like, these two absolutely are not in great circumstances. And of course they would want to have sex and just like forget about it for a little while. But this is absolutely going to turn into a thing. And it frustrated me even more because Lucas Verneck drew Storm having so much more sexual chemistry with Dr. Voodoo. And that's how the issue starts. So I don't know. That's just where I come from with it. You are 100% right insofar as if anybody comes for this, like it came out of nowhere. No, it came completely out of somewhere. I just kind of can't get into the X-Men. Like you said, they're a pantheon. Like I can't get into them not having casual sex. I can't get into all superheroes not having more casual sex where it just happens and is never remarked upon again. And it doesn't mean they have to have a relationship, doesn't mean they have to have complicated feelings. It just is how you pass the time between stopping Galactus and the next time the Beyonder shows up. Like Olympic athletes, saith KEVO, 100% correct. This whole place is the village, is the Olympic Village all the time. That's why they made the beds reinforced or whatever happened.
And I feel like one of the things that we sometimes kind of forget is like, I kind of, the 30 Rock joke, it was just two men sharing each other's strength. Like, I feel like that might happen a little more often than people consider.
Yes.
And like there's an exchange to it. Yeah. There is a reality exchange to being in dark places with people and coming out the other side. I don't mean this like weird, but like, yeah, I've definitely had even non-personally intimate, non-physically touching each other sexual encounters with a number of my bandmates over the years, not because we were so attracted to each other, but because after a show with enough people clapping, telling you how great you are, you just really want to touch yourself or each other. And like that they wouldn't seems a waste. Like it literally seems like denial of the human experience in a way that I find begrudging of real people feelings.
It's also weird to be like, they don't do it because they're superheroes and they have to live to a higher standard, as though like having consensual, edifying sexual experiences isn't morally a good thing. It's just so silly that we're still doing this, that we're like still having these conversations, and that there is a world in which we're now going to have to discuss if Aurora and Logan are in a relationship of any kind, when of course they're not and never will be and never should be. And that should never be a discussion. They should just be each other's booty call when stuff gets rough. And that's not immoral, and that's not bad, and that's not weird.
Yeah, I don't think that's even, I mean, for me, they could be in a relationship. I genuinely wouldn't give a shit. Like I don't know. I've watched Melrose Place, and I've seen Jake date everyone, and it's fine because everybody just sort of goes, "Oh, it's community cock, fine." Like there was a point in my life where people just kind of like genuinely looked at me and my friend group and went, "Whose turn is it on him next?" And like it was just kind of like, and that's Logan. And so for me, I actually want to remark on a sort of complicated, similar problem. Peach Momoko is, you know, a genius and a one-of-a-kind voice of a generation. You know, she is the Big Mac in a sea of whoppers. She is one of a kind and constantly imitated, and it's not anybody's fault that she's just so fucking good. But in her goodness comes an ability to find goodness and source things out of characters that people weren't looking to work with within the X-Men, or at least weren't getting approval for. So her Ultimate X-Men is bonkers with characters that are lousy for not being X-Men, which means the entirety of the X-Men are just running around every other Ultimate title. It's Storm in Black Panther. It's, everyone else in Ultimate Universe 1 year in. And I guess I'd never really considered how the only reason Wolverine can be essentially an Ultimates character, in that he is a product of the Red Room villainy, is that the Ultimate X-Men are being used kind of more as the Ultimate Mutant game.
Are we into Ultimate Universe now?
I mean, I don't even need it to be into the Ultimate Universe, because I mean, like, I think it's even a bigger problem that talks about some of the stuff going on in Wolverine as well, where Wolverine starts on this notion that the seeds planted in NYX as a result of the end of Krakoa were going to be more significant to the overall scope of what's going on. But everything I'm reading in Uncanny X-Men, with the start of Raid on Greymalkin, and everything going on in X-Men and X-Factor, the fall of Krakoa ultimately doesn't mean anything. You could sort of put in any random tragedy here, down to the fact that Xavier is the bad guy. You could place this Onslaught. You could place this Maximum Security. You could place this sometime in New X-Men. You could place this sometime around AVX. There's a ton of places you could just sort of stick this, and everything would be fine. The idea that Wolverine thinks that what happened in Krakoa is important when it's not is as interesting to me as the word X-Men being important to Peach Momoko's project, when clearly the X-Men are in every other book.
I get what you're saying. It's weird. The Peach Momoko thing is particularly weird because they're kind of calling themselves the X-Men out of nowhere, in this way that is like, the Avengers are the Avengers because it's like the Avengers initiative. Like there was a plan to put this team together, and so that kind of makes sense. Although they're the Ultimates. And I mean, Black Panther just is Black Panther. I don't know. The X-Men are particularly weird because the original team, they're Charles Xavier's X-Men. And it's the X gene and all of this stuff. But in the Ultimate Universe, they're just kind of like, what if we were X-Men? And they have no context for that. And like, as I said, once we really saw Viper in the last issue, I got a little bit more, and like Ultimate Universe helped here insofar as we saw Viper there with Emperor Sunfire. And so I had this sense of like, the X-Men story is like the Black Panther story and the Spider-Man story, in that they're happening in this world where all of this stuff is happening. They're just a little more sheltered and shielded because they're children of a certain age. Japan seems to be a little bit more isolationist and culturally is just very different. Like it after a year, I was a little bit more like, okay, yeah, this book actually is part of this universe. But the twofold problem there is, one, the reason I feel that way is not because the book is interacting with the universe so much as now I have the facts from other things that are happening other places that kind of support the connection. And two, I'm just not really sure. The whole point of mutants is they are a minority metaphor, and it doesn't have to be a particular minority. What it is the metaphor of feeling like you are like everybody else, but for this one thing that makes you different, that nobody can let go of, that everybody is going to ostracize you for. And it just works a little less in a world that is absolutely bonkers the way that this one, in a world in which, you know, a supervillain went back in time and took over in the 60s. And we're now kind of, I feel like the conflicting reports of, well, there's clearly a gigantic mutant contingent in Japan, but then the preview for Wolverine that you get at the end of Ultimate Universe seems to say that it's specific, like mutants were specifically given to the Rasputins and to Eurasia, like under their watchful eye to be dealt with. So I don't know. It's just like, for me, it can be a little difficult to get into everything about the Ultimate Universe when the rules are kind of chaotic.
And I think even then, chaos is kind of the name of the game. I really do think that is part of why they designed the X-Men. This thing that is, you know, so it's one of the reasons that I'm always fascinated when they're like, oh, what if the DC universe just hadn't formed without Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman? But I think for me with the X-Men, I know there's no exact analogy, but like, I guess I would compare it a little bit closer to like, you know, the Titans. The Titans really are that young, fun vibe. And so for me, I'm, I guess, a little more pressed to even really acknowledge the Ultimate X-Men as the X-Men. They're a little bit more the Ultimate Mutants. And this fear, this more than fear, this corporate disinterest in understanding a new modality. You know, the reason Deadpool did so well is because it took so long for them to realize he was popular. That is part of how all of the weird, creepy torture and sexually abused women in a basement shit got dropped from the story, and we wound up with a cool guy that Ryan Reynolds plays. But the other side of that is the reason Miles Morales worked so well is because they didn't let him get designed by committee. Once he was big and was this thing that happened, they just ran with it. Ultimate Mutants is like trying to do both, but you cannot be both a McNugget and a chicken select, my friend. You are one or the other.
Yeah, and Peach Momoko is designing Peach Momoko's team of amazing mutant girls. That like, I even could accept it if the X-Men had existed in like 1960 in this universe and Maker killed them all off, but like people still were slightly aware that the X-Men, or like one of the girls in Japan has one piece of underground propaganda that says that the X-Men existed and she, you know, and that they were mutants, and now she wants to emulate that. But Children of the Atom is a weird cult, and it's part of this, you know, control campaign. I don't know, just there's so much control stuff happening, and there's so little room for this universe to breathe that like we can't have organic stuff like how the X-Men would come together. And yeah, I mean, back to the one of the other things you said is just like, I don't know that we can keep going with X-Men as the sole. I really like the idea of doing the mutants, and maybe focusing on that word, or using X differently, so that it's not always the X-Men as in Xavier's X-Men, as in you can't have been an X-Man unless you were on the team and like officially designated as being part of the team, unless you were at the school, unless you were said to be on an X-Men team. Everybody who is a mutant who has appeared in an issue of this comic book and fought is an X-Man at this point. So, I'm saying in 616, it's different in other universes, but they have to then find their way. And I just feel like, unfortunately, X-Men, Ultimate X-Men really is the book that has not done that. It's done so much other stuff, and like it's still a really good book. The group of girls is incredible. The story is really cool, and like I said, I feel more and more like I understand how it fits into the universe and how Peach Momoko's so distinctive style is still a part of all this. Like, even though it feels so divorced and so different, it is starting to come together for me. The only thing is, it just, after all this time, just still doesn't feel like Ultimate X-Men. And part of that is because Marvel will never let the X-Men be anything but the X-Men.
Well, and that's even something that we've been talking about on this show forever. Also, side note, I just want to say, hey, D, love you. You're the best. Thank you so much for hitting like. You're the sweetest. Just there's someone from my real life that I love very much is watching. And so, hey, lady, you're amazing.
Thanks for watching.
But someone who, back to the mutants from somebody who is an outright goddess. I really think that one of the problems that Marvel often has is once it knows a good thing, it milks it to death, because something that DC is really good at is taking something that it loves and telling you to fuck yourself about it. Batman Beyond is not Batman, and Steel is not Superman, and Nubia is not Wonder Woman, and John is not Clark. And like, I could do this all day. DC is so good at making people that aren't people. I mean, basically, Kyle is just a modern reinterpretation of the same hyper-masculine tropes that came to define the lost era of guys like Hal Jordan. So some of them are just the same. But Ultimates really is just another attempt, and I'm not trying to poke at anybody. Oh, you know what, Allie? I love this. Allie says, I wonder if I'm enjoying Ultimate X-Men so much because I'm not reading any other Ultimate books. I love that. Because I kind of feel like Ultimates is, and Dennis Camp, you're better than me. Look at you writing it, Marvel motherfucker. Look at you. But I think Ultimates is just a pale imitation of Ultimates. I think Ultimate Black Panther reads like I feel so bad about this, but it feels like the failed pitch for a Black Panther TV show that would have run on Disney Plus in its own universe. It is Black Panther verse, where everything is Black Panthers, which I love. I love Black Panther being the thing which we focus all of the stuff through, but then I don't want it to have to play with other books. Then it should just get to be a super cool, exciting 12-issue amazing Black Panther event that I don't have to put up with other books sidetracking the narrative. And what's the other? Oh, Ultimate Spider-Man. I just forget it's even being published because it's just the new Renew Your Vows, which I love, but it's just the new Renew Your Vows.
Yeah, it's funny when you put it like that. The fact that they all sort of have this standalone thing, and Ultimates is just kind of trying to apologize for the original Ultimates. I mean, that's the thing, is like Ultimate Spider-Man was so good it started so good and really started this whole movement and really felt like it made sense at the time. People really enjoyed it. Ultimately, it gave us Miles Morales. There's some really good stuff about Ultimate Spider-Man, but then when they expanded the Ultimate Universe, it got messier and messier, and Ultimates is kind of the pinnacle of that, where it just gets so itchy that it's just a horrible, gross, weird read. And so Ultimates really feels like it is at all times trying to not do that. Going all the way to, like, again, what I just think was so ill-advised, because don't bring it up again. Don't ever talk about it. And certainly don't try and buy it back. Yet again, Wasp getting eaten. But this time it doesn't kill her. She kills the guy. Sure, really cool. And again, but it 100% felt like an apology. It 100% felt like Marvel being like, yeah, we know we do this. Here's how it's okay, and here's why it's better this time around. All four books have really important stuff going on and really clear motives, which is all fine, except for you are trying to create a new Ultimate Universe, and like 1 year in, with One World Under Doom starting right about now, like the hype starting to pick up, I can't help but feel like, okay, so our big blockbuster, if not at the end of the 2 years when we have to reckon with Maker, who has, full access to 616, if we don't deal with Maker coming back into the main Marvel universe and giving us some kind of Ultimate Universe, main Marvel universe crossover event, that's in 2 years for sure. And it just feels like, oh, okay, Maker as like another Doom-esque, really bad big villain guy. This all feels like it's in service of taking us to a crossover event. And I don't know, I'm just like, Ultimate Universe 1 year in didn't do anything to make me feel differently about what we have going on here. Go for it.
I was listening.
Perfectly fine story, some good beats in there, but like immediately, if you are a student of tropes, you knew what was going to happen. And I don't know, like, okay, that I definitely did read this issue. It wasn't bad. It just like, you only get one Ultimate Universe 1 year in after the whole premise and promise of this universe is every month it's been a month. And after a year with a 2-year countdown, we're halfway there. We really got to have a reckoning. We just got Nick Fury all over the place. Okay.
Yeah, end of the day, I would have preferred this be an unlimited comic. I would have rather not spend the money on it. It felt like it had good 4-page backup vibes, but don't tell me that you're a full service gas station because you're going to throw something on my windshield and tell me that you've cleaned it. Giving me maps that feel like maybe ones I might even find on Reddit could be more complete isn't my vibe. So I don't know. I'm walking away from this feeling like B-, C+. And some of that is just because like this is the only Ultimate one-shot so far. Oh no, the Ultimate Universe one-shot.
Well, yeah, but that was at the very start, and that kind of speaks to my point. Like that, the whole point of that was to start this universe.
Yeah.
And now we're halfway through. I sort of thought we would get, of course it can't be as big. Starting the universe is pretty huge, but I thought we would get something that reached towards those stars. And I would have called this Ultimate Nick Fury. I would have called this. Does he have any good nicknames or code names?
Aquarius.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. His birthday is February 4th.
Is it really?
Nicholas Joseph Fury's birthday is February 4th, yes.
Wow. Fellow Aquarius and birthday twin with you.
And same first two names, yeah, and everything. Yeah,
is your middle name Joseph?
That's what the Nico J, that's what the J in everything Nico J stands for, yeah.
Okay. Learn something new every day. I'm sure I've heard that before. I'm sure we've had this exact conversation not on air before. Yeah, I would have called this Ultimate Hand even. I also I'm so underwhelmed every time the council meets. And it's a big bummer about this universe because Hickman clearly went to great pains to establish who he thought would be on a council of people in a universe that was created this way. This kind of bespoke group that is, you would never think that Magic and Colossus would be this villainous. You would believe that Hulk could do it because we've seen it before, but I guess maybe more than anything, you wouldn't think that a writer would put Hulk in that position. The French Captain Britain is hilarious. Just every time I crack up. But they meet and they kind of say the same thing every time. It's kind of this, it's always how dare you summon us? How dare you talk to us like this? How dare you summon us? I have business to attend to. Everybody's always got business to attend to, so they can't be at this meeting. And it's very like, none of you learned improv, huh? Nobody's gonna yes and at this in this. But it's just like that always seems so silly when somebody is writing the story, and it's like you could have chosen to written them hyping each other up a little bit. Like the funniest moment for me is when Betta's father is like, oh, I was wrong. You actually can have your time wasted against your will. That was a very funny line. That was a great line. But like, that's the first time somebody yes-anded anybody else at this meeting. And the rest of it is just everybody going like, no, you're the idiot. And I don't know. I'm so underwhelmed when they meet. I feel so unthreatened by them. I don't care. Nobody impresses me. And I get that part of that is the point, because it's all people that Maker feels couldn't overtake him. So they are interesting, but not powerful. Or they have some big Achilles heel that Maker can work with. It just like, oh, these are the people running the world. I'm underwhelmed.
That's even kind of how I felt about Laura Kinney Wolverine not having a real villain. The book was just sort of like bad guys, and it felt maybe a little bit like underwhelming. It read a lot like Elektra. What was the
Woman Without Fear, right?
No, the Gang War. It read kind of like Elektra Gang War for me, which again, same writer, same arc, but the Woman Without Fear arc was so obsessed with fighting New Punisher. I don't know. This had a lot of really beautiful moments, a lot of great art, a really good visual. I'm really excited for the arc that's kicking off with issue number 2. I had a good time. I just felt like this is a lot of the same ground we covered talking about what Ultimate Universe did. Laura is a great character. This would have been more exciting if it was Ultimate Wolverine. I don't know. I liked it. B+, B-. I don't know. In some ways, I guess it's kind of like following up Ray of Light with music. I'm just automatically like, yeah, Don't Tell Me is a banger, but the rest of the record is just, it's not all nothing fails. And not every moment in this was a nothing fails, which of course written by Jem. That's why it's so good. Not to sell you out, Madonna. And you also didn't play guitar live, but
Erica Schultz, you are giving me this very genre writer, Raymond Chandler, hard-boiled woman action is your genre, and you write the shit out of that genre. And I love the characters that you write, and I love that. You know, I love when Teenie Howard writes an Exterminators. Was that Leah Williams?
Leah Williams.
Yeah, thank you. I love when Leah Williams writes an Exterminators, and there's this like comedic level of like girls calling each other sluts and like going out for drinks and having like a sort of adventure comedy situation. I also love when an Erica Schultz writes a Wolverine that is 100% absolutely a woman and is written from a woman's perspective and with a woman's voice. And that is both important, but the story could work. The story could entirely work regardless of the gender of the protagonist. And Erica Schultz does that incredibly well with her Daredevil. She does that incredibly well with her Wolverine. The voice here is so good. However, we're starting to get a little bit formulaic for Wolverine and Elektra, and this sort of like, I am here doing the job as the person. Oh no, I have gotten a call. I have to go abroad, do an adventure, and then come back to the States like a little more hard-boiled than I was before. And that's not a bad trope to repeat. There's how many male writers do the exact same thing, and so it doesn't super bother me. It's just it's not always going to result in a story I love the best.
Yeah, like I said, it's somewhere between a B+ and a B-. It's not that anything about this doesn't work for me, but it's kind of like, if you read Earth X first, that's your book. If you read Kingdom Come first, that's your book. If you read Crossover from Image first, I guess that's your book. I don't know. Probably. It was great, but like, I don't know. This is one of those books where if it came out as soon as Krakoa ended, this book would have been absolute crackerjack prize. There's a song by Tori Amos that got released that is only not cool anymore because we've heard it. And there is an issue of Daredevil by Frank Miller that will never come out, and it will always be cooler than you are, simply because you've never read it. And when we were waiting for Tori Amos to release 0 Point for a decade, the song became mythological legend, and it was featured on yessaid.com and hereinmyhead.com, and thedent.com featured stories about it. These are all famous Tori Amos sites from Web 1.0. But when the song finally was released in like 2006 on a piano, which was her box set, which is like actually physically behind me, it's right here, right? When it was released on that, the song is amazing. It's great, but like, it's an album track, and it's not the song that's going to change the fucking world. But it turns out that the follow-up issue to Born Again was going to be a 2-part story where Daredevil met with Doctor Strange. And Kuljit Mithra has an unbelievable article about this over on manwithoutfear.com. Definitely check that out. But because What It Could Never Be was so much cooler, you always spent your time thinking about what a cool book that would be. But once you ultimately got 0 Point, you kind of could no longer think about how cool it would be. 0 Point would have been a lot of people's favorite song if there had never been liner notes nearly a decade earlier saying 0 Point, your time is coming. If there hadn't been 3 or 4 incredible arcs by Erica Schultz that feel like they've covered this ground, along with incredible arcs by the likes of Tom Taylor on Wolverine, or my boy Tom King over at DC, it feels stronger. But there's elements to this that, because they are so murder-she, we feel they're kind of road. So
that's some good wordplay. I'm very proud of you.
All right, so let's take this over to the... Oh, you got more?
Just real quick, I do really want to shout out, though. Erica Schultz was the writer. Giada Belviso was the artist. Rachel Rosenberg was the color artist. Cover art was by Elena Casagrande and Edgar Delgado. There are a ton of women on this book. And this is how it should be. Giada Belviso is not an artist that I knew very well. I think she really complements an artist like Lucas Vernac. I see a lot of similarities in their art, but it's not she's the female Lucas Vernac. I just think they draw really hot people. And I just, I give Marvel a really hard time about the lack of women, and Marvel does an immensely better job than DC, but I still like keeping the pressure on Marvel. And something that really bothers me is sometimes I will say, like, there's just not enough women creatives at Marvel, and then we'll get a book and it'll be like, okay, a woman's writing this book. Everybody else attached to the book is male. Or it'll be the opposite, far more rare, but everybody attached to the book is male except the penciler. And it is as though, like, they have to have got a woman. And the idea that like 3 women could work on a book together when 3 men work on basically every book together, 3 women working on a book together is not a common occurrence. It is not an uncommon occurrence. It is rare to very rare. So I am really excited about that aspect of this book. I, like you, put it in the BB plus region, but I for creative team, and I would really like to see more creative teams with more than one woman on it, women working together, and not just sort of checking a box and being like, we got woman established, we are good.
I would have appreciated if there were more women over on Superwoman.
Yeah, that's actually why I wanted to get that point out, because holy shit, was that a not shock DC, but was I really, really annoyed about that.
You know, I thought the idea of making Lois Lane Superwoman exciting, the way they did it, fun and playful, it had a sexiness to it, but it wasn't like, I feel bad because I don't want to ever single anybody out, but sometimes when people are like, oh, that was sexy, I just thought I was showing my butt, and you just want to be like, Channing Tatum, come on, man. You know, women are always so much more aware of it because everything a woman does with her body is legislated, drawn, quartered, and then financially determined to be of value or not. So women are always much more aware of their bodies, but I feel like is something that like happens with men is they're sort of like, oh, you thought that was sexy? Oops. Everything about this being sexy was so intentional. It was so cool. It was the hottest ballroom dance you've ever seen. It was so right the way Lana and Kara were such good Judies to a character that I would love to know better. I've read some Lois, but it turns out I just don't know her well enough because I maybe think Lois Lane is KEVO. I maybe think like her thought process, the way she reacts to stimulus, the way she wants a minute and then panics, like she's great. And like I always thought I thought the way people thought about Superman was Lois, but it turns out Lois is just as flawed and beautiful. There were some places that I thought there were technical issues. Like I could have maybe stood to understand who Lena Miracle was a little more. She wasn't super defined, but that last page epilogue, like when people are like, this cracked the internet in half. No, it didn't. Finding out that all of Lois Lane's powers come from the whole premise is in absolute power. Amanda Waller stole the powers from a ton of people. And when the powers resumed where they went, about 10% went to the wrong people. Lois Lane has all of Zod's powers. As somebody who wants to be Austin Young on Twink Top to all of the Zods out there, Mama, I'm so fucking proud of you.
I agree with everything you said. This was a really very fun, very sexy issue. And you know, the really unfortunate thing, the thing that drives me nuts about DC and this crusade I am on regarding the lack of women there, is that a lot of the men write really well. You know, Tom King should not be getting all these female character headlining books, but he does a great job with them. I imagine there is a lot there that women readers just feel like this is so obviously a male voice. This is so obviously not a woman's experience. And that is, I'm 100% sure true. And I apologize for kind of giving validation to just what is in general a terrible idea. I, however, did feel that Joshua Williamson wrote a pretty good story of three women. There are three artists on this book, Edwin Gallman, Laura Braga, and Nicola, I cannot pronounce that last name. we have one woman artist on this book. We don't really see what the spread is on who drew what, but I also do have some questions about why there were 3 artists on this book. It's a little bit jarring at times. There is enough like flashback and stuff that you could have divvied it up, and that's not really what happens. It just kind of randomly pages will not be drawn by the same person, and it's not really broken up in a clear way. So that was a little bit confusing and a little bit of a bummer. That said, yeah, this was really fun. It was seeing 3 women together being superheroes just a lot of times is good for the soul. I think, we see Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man hanging out all the time. I just don't see why we wouldn't see 3 Supergirls, super women hanging out all the time. It was a really solid gag at the end to see that the powers came from Zod. It was especially enjoyable for me because I don't have much Zod experience. My Zod experience is the Superman movies, and then the Superman movies, because it's the other ones too, and then you having me read Superior Sons, which there's not even that much Zod in that. There is, what's his name?
Sidson and Lorzod.
There's Lorzod, who I love, who's adorable, and is just a great character, but that's really my introduction. And it just sort of is great to have this moment where you see a character that you know very little about from something else, who now you're seeing in a very different light. But also, like, the first thing I thought was like, so are we going to also see Lorzod at some point? Because that would be really cool.
I kind of maybe thought there'd be more references to Kneel Before Zod, which was an ongoing book that I read all of, but whatever. Honestly, I feel weird saying it. I B- this, how much I liked it though. I think one of the things that I did lack sorely was an understanding of where this goes in the greater scheme. I'm reading Action Comics, but telling me this goes around that doesn't tell me a whole lot. So I had a great time. I enjoyed it. It's weird because I thought this was something I've had nowhere near enough of. I have not had enough Lois Lane. But I've had too much Batman classic narrative origins. I'm telling you right now, if this was the house style at DC, I'd read it to death. Like that year that Sam Nee was the house style at Marvel. Holy shit. I would read this forever. This was visually the most beautiful book of my year. This is a book that could teach Last Halloween how to give out candy. This book knows how to lay out every single sweet moment for me. I don't care about the story. I almost wish it was just a series of pinups. The art is an A+. The script on the art, because this writer who did an incredible job over on Nightwing, a run I have loved for a minute. This run, because I think it's Dan Waters, right? This run is, the script is equally as good as the art is to the script. Just wish DC hadn't done 13 fucking Batman origin minis, and this is going to be 12 issues, 3 4-issue self-contained arcs fitting into Batman's early years as a hard-boiled crime detective. So it's 3 4-issue minis, all by the same team, all fitting into early Batman, focusing on him as a detective solving crimes, establishing his voice in Gotham. And that's why it's the dark patterns. It's the dark patterns of Gotham crime. D for the book, because D for the book. But if this had come out in 2023, A for the book. It's just, I read this. I read Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and Haunted Night. I read Catwoman When in Rome. I read Batman Dark Age. We're doing whatever the Mark Waid book is, Batman and Robin, Young Gay Love, or whatever it's called. And I can't care. But B+ in a perfect world. Just realistic world, C+. Sorry, guys. It's DC's fault, not yours.
You took all the words right out of my mouth. And it was even to the point where I was almost like, hey, dude, when we curate stories, we can't do Batman origin stories anymore. This is a weird thing that DC is. You feel like this is a this year thing more than anything else?
I probably think it's like their actual annual thing. Like until maybe the last 2 or 3 years, one of Marvel's favorite things to do was to every other year do 6 one-shots that reestablish the origin of the Hulk, the origin of Iron Man, the origin of Spider-Man, the origin of the X-Men, the origin of Fantastic Four, and sometimes it's the Avengers, sometimes it's just Captain America, sometimes it's Black Panther, but this is like a pattern. The companies love to pick somebody to focus on the origin of. It's just DC can't seem to get past their, blessed trinity.
Yeah. Looking at way back when we started doing this in Dark Age, which was so cool and has the benefit of being an Elseworld kind of Black Label, like this is actually a different universe. This is totally a Batman story, and like you could even go pull this Batman into a Crisis or something, the Batman of Dark Age into a Crisis or something, and put him opposite the Batman that we see on Prime Earth. So that's totally fine. When we look at something like World's Finest, where we did the 2-issue origin with Robin hanging out with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, like that's cool. Like those kind of retconny intercontinuity story, intercon, those are totally good. But then like we add in my first time really in-depth reading Long Halloween, and then all the follow-ups to Long Halloween into Last Halloween, and we're starting to get to a point where it's not even like I don't want to do this anymore. It's like DC does a lot of this. And then we get this story, and like you nailed it when you said like it wouldn't have this have been cool. Actually, what would have been really cool is if this was just a silent issue, because there's nothing wrong with this. It's just like, so a big thing for me, this is just a personal thing. This does like kill my personal grade, but it's one of those things where I'm like, this would be the difference between being a teacher and grading versus being a reviewer and grading. I don't care about hard-boiled crime Batman. Like, I only want weird sci-fi superheroes or supervillains. I always want him facing a Mr. Freeze or a Poison Ivy. Even the Joker to me is just a little bit boring because he's just a guy. Catwoman, a little bit boring because she's just a lady. But the really, give me a Clayface. I just like, I don't know. That's the Batman I like. And I never care when he is like going after crime families. And this is true of Marvel too. Like, I don't love when Daredevil is super going after crime people. Like when it's not when it's not Wilson, who feel like Wilson feels like he enhances the idea of street crime in a way that's really fun. And so far, and I feel like you maybe have a different perspective on this than I do. And again, this is not like my taste is different. It's that I really don't know that I've seen enough. So far, Carmine Falcone does not give me Wilson Fisk levels of, when I hear that Fisk is the problem, I am excited to figure out what we're doing about it. When we get to a Batman story and I hear that it's Carmine Falcone, I'm just kind of like, oh, like, okay. So now I guess we're going to the docks. I don't care.
Fisk is Ra's al Ghul, but Carmine Falcone is like dealing with the Magia.
Yeah.
Or the Owl, he's still significant, but you're not looking at a top tier person, you know. And KEVO, your comment of, I feel the word is fantastical. Even Fisk, given his size and presence, is fantastical, whereas most street level heroes and the crime they battle aren't. I really agree. You know, there's oh my gosh, there's this unbelievable indie comic from like 12 years ago now, called Kid Riot, and it's about this unbelievable young superhero, and for the most part a lot of his villains are street level, but every now and then you get a vaudevillain who is a reality manipulator, and it really changes the game, such that when Superman battles Bizarro, it's his equal. When he battles Mr. Mxyzptlk, he's fighting Merlin. But when he fights Lex Luthor, he's fighting the evil that could win the White House. So I feel like, you know, to that point, and to your point, TK, Batman is probably best when he's fighting people more fantastical than he is, because as a human goes, he's too incredible. Like, I would not enter Sonic the Hedgehog in a normal hedgehog competition. Let that sink in. So, I've had a great time with this episode. This has been some terrific books. It's been just a lot of fun, and these have been just 4 great titles that have really helped me remember what's really fun about doing this show week after week. So even if each one didn't have the best story, I had a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. This also was like one of our simpler weeks. We did not let... It's funny, we did let some other content bleed in, but most of it was Storm. The Ultimate stuff really doesn't count, because that's all important context. We did talk about Storm for a while, but that's fine. But like, you know, we say a lot, like we're doing 1 or 2 issues DC, 1 or 2 issues Marvel, and that's it. And then what we end up reading as sort of like, I don't want to say filler, but like further context, is a lot. And some weeks it's really fun to just focus, and also like it's often we're doing like, we'll do catch-ups. So, you know, we did Ultimate catch-up last week, and that was many books. It was, you know, 1 title, but like many books. Getting to do 4 number 1s and just really straightforward all the way through. It does sort of, even if I didn't, if everything wasn't an A, it does kind of remind me what I love about reading comics and what I love about talking about comics with you. And yeah, I mean, it just, none of these are going to be in my top 10 of the year, but I enjoyed them all, and they made me think a lot about, especially 2024 in comics, which is rapidly coming to a close.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to have some amazing coverage of 2024 in comics. As we look to 2025, I know that Marvel is starting to overwhelm us with the end of year stuff, so it can be a little difficult to try and figure out what to cover, whether it's Timeless or what's the other one? Time Slip.
Time slide, I think.
We will figure it out, and
Yeah.
we will make sure that we are covering everything Marvel and DC as we move into 2025. I've had an amazing time expanding our coverage in this last year, and I can't wait to do more. But Kevo, until we come back, your birthday was yesterday, and not to overhype one book, but the book that you are letterer and colorist to, their penciler had a birthday today. Hey, Taryn, happy birthday.
Yes, that's right. Happy birthday, brother.
Happy birthday to our favorite dude in the world. But other than that,
not go overboard. He's still my annoying little brother.
Okay, but he's a dude, and there is nobody who is more dude than Taryn. Basically, Taryn is the little Lebowski. It's nuts. But Kevo, what was your favorite thing to hear about today? Whether it was just hearing our melodious voices or one of the titles in particular, and how do you feel about the rumor that Chris Evans is returning to the MCU?
That actually was probably the thing I was going to address as the news item that I am most intrigued by. I think the thing I'm most frustrated by is the necessity for an announcement like that. A lot of people are going to say it should have just been kept secret, but then it leaks and you get mad about that. This way it's all above board. It's just, it gets frustrating. We were watching Party of Five, because again, we're going through so many old 90s shows, and we thought for a second that a regular character was only going to be in the first episode because that of a new season, because that was the kind of thing that you could get away with back then. Now, if one of the regulars wasn't coming back and only came back for the premiere, you would know in April or September. And that makes media creation a little bit frustrating for artists. We don't know what he's going to be. So, I'm on board. And as I keep saying in this process, thank God the movie is at least not too far away. So we'll know soon enough. And if all the stuff you guys are talking about is any indication, which it usually is, we have some interesting things going on with the multiverse, with the Fantastic Four coming up. So a lot to look forward to with the MC unification of what you guys have been reading.
Well, I can't wait. And until then, where can everybody find you online?
You can find me on the socials at KEVO Really. That's KEVO REALLY.
Love it. TK, what was your favorite thing we talked about tonight, and where can everybody find you online?
It was Laura Kinney, the Wolverine, and more specifically, it was the fact that 3 women and more got to creatively produce a book together, and the world didn't end. If you want to talk to me about that, you find me mostly these days on Blue Sky at TK Elemental. Nico, what was your favorite thing that we talked about this week, and where can everybody find you, your amazing music, and your amazing self?
Oh, geez. I was going to say my favorite thing that we talked about was you guys, and how much I love being a part of this team, how grateful I am for all of you, and how this show would simply not exist without the amazing work of these two gentlemen. If you want to find out more about TK's amazing self, please do also check out our previous Rivals stream. Big fan of that myself. Watched it a few times. Can't wait to get into a little bit more Rivals gameplay. But if you want to find me, guys, you should just get yourself a GBA and start playing some Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced. It's all I'm talking about online these days. It's all the rage. But if you want to find out more about me, Nico Action, and NICOACTION, Nico Action Music, and NICOACTION MUSIC. I have 2 holiday EPs you guys can check out, plus 2 more coming out before the end of the year. Very excited to share that stuff with you guys. It has been really interesting. I am not too proud to say that it's been a tough year, but I am definitely too proud not to mention that before the year is out, my cover of the Pretenders 500 miles is 2,000 miles. It's Proclaimers, Pretenders. There's so many miles. But we got a ton more stuff coming out this year. I hope we're going to do at least one more holiday songs mix episode. Tori will lose her shit if we don't. That's, of course, series contributor Tori Sheehan. Big fan. And we have our Wednesday comics, our Sunday drag race, and of course, Fridays, Saturdays, and more are our coverage of things like games, music, books, movies, TV, and everything in between. And we cannot wait to bring it all to you guys soon. So check us out at HTML, X is for podcast, and X is for show. Until next time, you guys can do 3 things for us. Number 1, like. Number 2, comment. And number 3, subscribe. But 3 things that you guys can do for yourselves. Number 1, please stay safe. It is a spooky, scary world out there, and we live in New Jersey. Yesterday was the craziest day in the history of New Jersey for fog. Fucking fog. And then today was the hottest December 11th ever recorded.
And that's not even talking about the drones.
The drones!
Oh, the
which
drones! Oh my god, has
We have UFOs.
They've been
So
like flying everywhere in Jersey.
We
still
just don't
know?
care in New Jersey. We don't care. My favorite story ever, if you look into it, back in 2018, there was this giant blue Godzilla-like brilliant beam of light in the sky. No one cares. It was an electrical transformer. How could we possibly see that from New Jersey? Nope, we just don't care. So we have aliens now. It is what it is.
So until next time, number 1, stay safe. Number 2, be brave. Number 3, evolve daily. Who you were yesterday, amazing. Who you are today, incredible. Who you are tomorrow, we hope it is as cool as TK. And until then, we hope to see you. But the other thing, just guys, just fucking buy the comics. I'm sorry, we just don't say it enough. Go out there, go to your shop, whether it is Coast City Comics, Zap Comics, or you go to some strange pop-up shop that appears at the Englishtown Flea Market and you buy yourself a complete run of Cable Deadpool. It could happen. The guy also sold a ton of tubs of pre-workout. It was a weird shop. Go buy these books, buy rad comics, then come here and watch rad dudes talk about rad comics. As Allie versus the Evil Dead says, I just only wish Allie versus the Evil Dead would appear, because you guys should listen to her. She's a genius. Anyway, everybody's on Blue Sky. Be a Blue Sky baby. We'll see you. Bye.